games, which we qualify as not as close as the final score suggested. The playoffs are getting thicker, and Tom Brady's jacket is getting larger. You put a seam here, and you put a seam here. That's what you do. Here's our paddle. Let's go around the horn. Right up the alley. Right up the alley.
Alex Guerrero's hiding under there with Tom Brady.
What is the jacket? You know what he's doing, right? He's totally trolling everybody, right?
Of course he is.
Alshon Jeffrey not getting the Cody Parkey treatment today, thankfully. I'd like to ask you guys what part of that you think is because he won them a Super Bowl last year, and what part of that is he's not a kicker. A little brain exercise for you. Champs going out like that, and the Saints and how they came back from 14-0 down at home to move forward. Mina Kimes, we're going to start with you. You predicted this game would be closer than a lot of people suggested. I think you were right in that regard. A couple points for you. Did the Saints win this or the Eagles blow it?
The Saints won it, and the reason why Jeffrey's not getting blamed is he wasn't the difference in this game. The difference was the quarterbacks, and that Drew Brees, for 3 quarters, was the better quarterback. Now, Nick Foles has been spectacular in the postseason, completing 79% of his passes on third down before yesterday. Last night, 2 for 7. Meanwhile, Brees wasn't perfect, but he was
He wasn't, I was going to say. Yeah.
Michael Thomas. Yes, so Michael Thomas is the best wide receiver left in the playoffs, and he accounted for 50% of the Saints' yards. There is no answer for him. And if that connection is going, the Rams are going to be in a lot of trouble.
Frank Isola?
Well, if you remember last week, the Eagles won because of a missed kick. Here you had a missed kick that the Saints opened an opportunity. And what did Nick Foles do? What he's done all throughout this run that he's been on the last 2 years. He's marching his team down the field. And that one moment, the Eagles finally turned into a pumpkin. Great job by the Saints. Remember last season, they lost on a last-second play, which was a disaster. Next thing they know, they're down 14-0 at home. Their defense, Mina's talked about it before. That is a balanced team, offense, defense, and special teams.
Israel, you heard Alshon Jeffrey after the game say, this was on me. This was all on me. I let everybody down. How do you hear that?
I agree with you, Alshon Jeffrey. Normally, I'd be on Mina's side here, and I'd say, look, there's so many other plays here. But look at the series of events that happened there. Early on, the Eagles were great. The Saints in that first quarter, obviously not great. And then from then on, even though Michael Thomas was great, even though they had a 52-yard field goal in a dome that could have put that game away, the Eagles still had the opportunity. And they had, after that first quarter from Nick Foles, had him play like a backup quarterback, if you will. The Eagles did for the rest of the way. And they had this one drive. So they get that one long pass to Ertz. They had the roughing the passer penalty. Here we go. We're in a rhythm. Bam, right in your hands. Mr. Reliable. You drop it. And if you look at the percentage of success rate for, as you mentioned, Tony, the Cody Parkey kick versus that play,
I agree there.
With that receiver, that perfect a pass. I mean, which one is supposed to happen?
This is a play Alshon Jeffrey
I understand the feeling for
99 times out of 100. Maybe he only had 3 drops all year. Jackie McMullen. And also, the snap on that play, they snapped the ball right before the 2-minute warning. They should have been in no rush at all because why be in a rush to get Brees the ball back even if you did score? All right, Jackie Mack, you want to make a final ruling on the Jeffrey play and then we can go on from there.
Well, I mean, obviously he should have caught the ball, but to say that that's the reason they lost the game, how do we know when he caught the ball that it becomes a touchdown? Let's talk about Foles in those final 3 quarters, Izzy. He was 10 of 22. In those final 3 quarters. Yep. What makes you think that because Alshon Jeffrey catches that ball, all of a sudden everything's going to change?
Foles magic,
the Saints, the reason why I think this win was so significant for them was the very things we're saying. They did not play perfect. They were not great, but when it mattered, they were. We talked about third downs. Drew Brees, 4 of 5 on thirds down. You know what the rest of all the other teams were on third down over the weekend, Tony? 2 for 23.
Yeah.
That's a team that knows how to get it done when it matters. That's
Israel,
the Saints
I'll ask you then. What did this win tell you about New Orleans?
Well, it tells me that obviously they've got both sides of the ball, can play really well at any given point, but basically since the middle of the season, we haven't seen both sides of the ball really vibing here. So they kind of going to have to get to that point, especially against the Rams.
Yeah, so I don't want to put words in your mouth here, but the idea that this one told you more about the Saints or maybe had you walk back the Saints a little bit. Mina Kimes, I think you think it tells you more because they can win multiple types of games.
Absolutely. The Eagles defense held them to 20 points, their lowest total at home this year, and they still found a way to win. That secondary has been so much better than anyone projected. Now, losing Sheldon Rankins is going to hurt them a lot. They are so much better at rushing the passer when he's on the field. But the fact that they sustained pressure without him is very promising.
And Frank, did you come away from this game thinking more about the Saints, or maybe because it was a struggle, maybe not as much?
Now, come on. Here is an Eagles team that beat Atlanta. They beat Minnesota. They beat the Patriots last year to win a Super Bowl. This year they go on the road and they beat the Bears. The only team to stop Nick Foles and the Eagles in a playoff game happens to be the Saints. And when they're down 14-0 at home, and we know the NFL is set up for the higher seed to make it to the Super Bowl, that's 2 home wins and you're in. They're under a lot of pressure. That interception right there by Lattimore, that changed everything. And of course, the
right at that point it was 14-0,
and
then the interception by Lattimore. Right. All right, the champs are out at this moment, but Doug Peterson, Nick Foles today, quote, "I can't say enough good things about Nick. To do the things he's done the last 2 years, like I said, I can't thank him enough. He'll always be remembered in Philadelphia for bringing a Super Bowl," end quote. How do you hear that, Mina?
I'm laughing because it sounds like an obituary. He's still alive, Doug. But he's gone, okay? And I got to think, watching yesterday's game, the Eagles obviously wanted to win, but a little part of the organization had to be relieved that Nick Foles didn't play amazingly because he was about to create a very difficult situation for them. Now, the choice is clear. Foles was inconsistent. They go with
So now the choice is clear. Just because Jeffrey drops that ball and they lose this game, the choice is clear. Is that it for you, Israel?
Because he struggled all game.
No, I mean, I thought that was the trade Carson Wentz game. If Nick Foles is going to find a way to have more magic, get to another NFC Championship game, and then who knows, that would be the one that makes you think, hey, maybe we should move on from Carson Wentz. But the rest of that team needs to take leadership position there and say, look, I know that Nick Foles did these things at the quarterback position, but we can play a lot better around Carson Wentz as well. And obviously he's got more years ahead of him in his career.
Yeah, let's take a minute to recognize how great of a story Nick Foles has been. You know, the last 2 years ago, 4-1 in the playoffs, win a Super Bowl. He is setting the bar very high for Carson Wentz, but it's now about Carson Wentz. They drafted him high for a reason. Here would be my concern, though. His last 2 seasons both ended in injury. That's the reason why Foles was playing. So you have to, we wonder about everybody's durability, whether it's Josh Allen in Buffalo, Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. Here's a guy whose durability has to be questioned.
And Jackie Mack.
Okay, so you can question that, but if that's your biggest question about your young quarterback, I'm pretty good with that because you're not questioning his skill set. And when it comes down to skills, Izzy, I don't care if Foles had thrown for 5 touchdowns. Carson Wentz was the future quarterback for Philly.
So you heard this as a goodbye, basically, from Doug Peterson to Nick Foles. You heard it as a goodbye, Jackie?
Goodbye, and here's a nice parting gift. It's that refrigerator over there in door number 3.
Okay,
Enjoy.
Thank you, Jackie.
Man.
Everything else from the weekend in playoffs was part of it wasn't really that close weekend. You want to start with the Patriots, Rams, or Chiefs? Let's start with the Patriots and Chiefs, since that's the matchup now. Greatest chick Belichick ever pulled, convincing the world, sure, bet against them. Vintage surgery from New England, and for KC, how about the defense coming together? And how about that they dominated a game without Patrick Mahomes throwing a touchdown pass? Frank, we'll start with you. Who looked better this weekend?
Well, you mentioned the Chiefs' defense, and all we ever heard was that Andrew Luck in that running game was going to tear them apart. And then Mahomes' first time out, I thought he was very good. But come on. The Patriots are the team that everybody wants to write off. You give Bill Belichick, Tom Brady a week off. What do? They win that home playoff game, and they blew out a very good Chargers team. That performance was extremely impressive.
Jackie McMullen?
Well, and I had said beforehand that nobody needed the bye week more than New England Patriots because I don't care what the Patriots say. Tom Brady was nicked up. That knee was bothering. He had 2 weeks to look how strong he looked in this game. And let me tell you something else. The first 3 touchdowns scored by the New England Patriots, first career postseason touchdown in all 3 cases. 2 by Sony Michel, 1 by Philip Dorsett. So we're going to talk a lot about Brady and Edelman, but there were other guys that stepped up for the Patriots, most notably that defensive and offensive line. They looked dominant.
Mina, who impressed you more?
Yeah, the Patriots played the most complete game of the weekend. Brady was clinical, Belichick was masterful, but they won, as Jackie said, at the line of scrimmage on both sides. The Chargers' pass rush is good. Tom Brady could have taken a nap back there. I wanted to take a nap during most of the game, but he really could have. Meanwhile, on the other side of the ball, that Patriots pass rush, which has not been spectacular, they pressured Phillip Rivers on 70% of his dropbacks in the first half. They made his life miserable. They were the more physical team.
Not to get too lost in the weeds here, Mina, but it was almost like what made the Chargers so successful last week, the cover 3 against Baltimore, was the exact opposite this week. Like, that is not the right defense. Look at all the faces Mina's making here. Go ahead, Mina.
I just don't how you're going to roll out the same defense against Lamar Jackson against Tom Brady. Really, zone, that few blitzes, give me a break.
And Edelman picks that apart as well. Gutierrez, how about you?
Of course.
I'm sorry. The Patriots winning a home divisional round playoff game is shocking to everybody because we wanted to write them off. They had a 3-game winning streak earlier this year against the Chiefs, Colts, and Bears. That was pretty darn impressive, okay? And this team, when it's healthy, the offense is always good. Against playoff teams alone this year, including that Chargers win, they're averaging 37-plus points. So what's surprising is that Chiefs defense looking the way it did against Andrew Luck and that offense that had been rolling. I'm pretty sure, a lot of people watching thought that the Colts were on a roll and going to run through Patrick Mahomes and those guys. That Chiefs defense was spectacular, and that was the most surprising part of it.
Jackie, let me ask you this. The whole reports of our death greatly exaggerated, and everybody counted us out. They were a 4-point favorite. I know it was the smallest favorite of the week, but they were favored to win this home game in the divisional round. But also the reimagining of this team being run by Belichick or being run by Brady on the field. Where are you with this today? Because I saw a lot of praise about Belichick and Brady is just being carried along for the ride. Is that how you see it?
No, I don't see it that way at all. And, all the hubbub that you're talking about, it was really centered on mostly Brady. The mortality of Tom Brady, it's been a year-long story. It's going to continue to be as long as he keeps playing. And I do agree that the game plan for the Patriots was wonderful. But don't forget Josh McDaniels, Tony. He's the offensive coordinator. And I thought some of the things that he pulled out were pretty
I didn't forget Josh McDaniels. The rest of the league did when he didn't take the Colts job and now was only available for none of these jobs. I mean, I think he interviewed with Cincinnati, but he's clearly coming back with the Patriots. And now, yes, he is certainly motivated. If you're not in the mood, you get in the mood. It's the playoffs, but he's certainly motivated to call a game. Isola, you can answer that question and we'll get out of here.
Well, I also think what happened when they lost to Miami on a freak play was kind of like, it seems like the Patriots have lost their magic. They still have that coach and that quarterback, and for him to be doing this at this age, and you know what? For him to have a chip on his shoulder, it's good. You talked about them being favored. A lot of people are riding the Chargers. You know what? They're going to win. They're going to win back-to-back games.
Yeah, a lot of people did think.
Maybe beat Kansas
Did
City.
anybody in this panel think the Chargers were going to win this game? I just wonder. Oh, yes, Mina Kimes.
Big mistake.
Thank you very much. Well, I mean, you got the points for saying one game is close. You're losing the points here for taking the Chargers. Because that game was never close. Honestly, that game was, I know the final score suggested, but it was never close. All right, so now we have a rematch because Chiefs and Patriots played earlier this year, and it was a shootout. I looked ahead, the 7-day forecast, highs could be -2 in Kansas City on Sunday night. So get ready. Maybe not the shootout you thought.
Belichick
Buy or
loves
sell
that,
next.
baby.
We'll have a
Belichick's
shootout and buy or
loving
sell.
I'll be in front of my TV.
Tom Brady, Jackie.
To you by Chase, coming to you from the Seaport District at Pier 17.
Gutierrez 18, Isola 17, McMullen 15, Mina Kimes 12. Some work to do in buy or sell. It was Rams 30, Cowboys 22, and it was another, not as close as the final score suggested game. Also another ground and pound game. And to that, I would say, if only there were a panelist on an international television show who accurately predicted this, even accurately predicted C.J. Anderson having a big game. He is a cement mixer in a tackle, by the way. And you had this one right, Kimes. You're getting those points back. You see how that works? Buy or sell what the Rams showed you.
So the reason I thought C.J. Anderson would have a big game is not because he's great, although he is and is a delight, but it's because when the Rams offense is clicking, they make life so easy for those running backs. Gurley and Anderson were running through wide open holes. Gurley averaged 5.75 yards before contact. That is a tribute to the Rams offensive line, which was spectacular this weekend.
Real and spectacular. How about you, Israel? What you learn from L.A.?
Right. Well, when C.J. Anderson was available to everybody about a month ago and then gives you 5+ yards
Well, he
per
is a
carry,
delight.
you
I
know
believe
it's the
we've
whole
established
team.
he's a delight. So, okay, there you go.
He is. And one of the reasons that he was able to be successful was a tell the Rams had on that Cowboys defensive line where they could see what gaps to run through just by the way they were lined up. So you got to give some credit for the preparation.
When you hear that a team was tipping their pitch, to borrow another expression, I mean, does that blow your mind or does that happen at this stage of the game, Israel?
I mean, it feels like it happens, but we never really get the intel until, people are bragging after a divisional playoff.
Intel on the tell, I hear you. Frank Isola, how about you?
Yeah, it looked like the Rams from earlier in the season, kind of dominant on both sides of the ball. Give Sean McVay some credit. A lot of pressure on him. Here's a guy with a coaching tree, and now he finally has a playoff victory. And as a result, one of their ball boys is now the leading candidate to get the Miami job.
I know you got
so
Jones.
congratulations
All right,
to him.
Frank. And Jackie McMullen, how about you?
Well, if you had told me that Ezekiel Elliott, who I would never call a delight, actually, would be held to 47 yards, that's not something that I would think would bode well for the Cowboys, and not something I would have expected in this game. The Rams scored on 5 of their first 6 possessions. The reason everybody thought the Cowboys would win this game was because of their defense. And the Rams just flipped the switch.
I don't think everybody thought the Cowboys were going to win, but that their best path to victory would be defensively. They just got blown up on both lines. Well, we'll talk about the Cowboys, though, here specifically, Israel Gutierrez, and how they're situated going forward and how close they are to taking that next step. How close do you think they are? You heard Jason Garrett, by the way, say today he expects Scott Linehan back at OC. Go ahead, Israel.
Yeah, I think they're pretty close. I think it was encouraging second half of the season, the way they sort of trended, and you saw Amari Cooper had like 3 pretty special games. If they can get Dak Prescott a little bit more help, maybe a go-to tight end, I think they can really build a formula that could get you to a Super Bowl.
You think they can get to a Super Bowl with Dak Prescott as their quarterback? Frank, you as well?
Hey, Mark Rippon won a Super Bowl. Trent Dilfer won a Super Bowl. I think Dak Prescott can, especially with that defense and that running game. They lost to a better team on the road. It happens in the NFL.
Jackie McMullen?
It does happen in the NFL, but it seems to happen a lot to the Cowboys. When are the Cowboys going to actually find the end zone? If you go back and look at this season, one of their biggest problems was they couldn't score touchdowns. They scored way too many field goals. That's got to change if you want to talk about the Super Bowl.
I think they were 26th in red zone efficiency in the NFL. Mina Kimes, how about you?
They've got a championship caliber defense, not so on the offense. Dak Prescott doesn't just need talent around him, Izzy. He needs a creative play caller, much like what we saw with Mitch Trubisky. It reminds me a lot of him. Unfortunately, Scott Linehan is not Matt Nagy, which is why I think this will backfire.
You think there needs to be a move made in this? If you're Jerry Jones, you're making a move this offseason.
He won't do it, but he should.
Buy or sell 3, Kyler Murray entering his name into the NFL draft. There was a deadline for tonight, and he puts the name in. The report, by the way, was that he was looking for $15 million guaranteed from the Oakland A's to commit to baseball. Nothing like that at the moment, so he moves forward in between 2 sports. Buy or sell that, Frank?
Well, Kyler Murray, good for him. He has leverage now because he does have the NFL to fall back on. If I'm the A's, though, I've already given him close to $5 million. I'm not giving him, and it's been reported they'd have to give him maybe $15 million. He's still 5'9". You have a better chance of being successful in baseball at 5'9" than you do in football.
Jackie McMullen?
The irony of Moneyball, even considering giving a guy who hasn't swung a single bat in even single A $15 million just blows my mind. They should not and they will not. And if you want to turn this into an NFL versus Major League Baseball thing, NFL's already won that battle. This isn't going to make any difference.
I see why MLB wants to do it to get the marketable star, but it makes no sense for the A's because, as Jackie pointed out, he has very little experience, less than 240 at-bats in varsity college baseball, and he clearly wants to play football. I mean, how much more obvious?
You think it's clear that football is where his heart is, so, okay. And how about you, Israel Gutierrez?
I think you can find out pretty early in a top quarterback's career whether he's going to be a bust, whether the Johnny Manziel type, or whether he's going to be really good, like a Russell Wilson or Drew Brees at their height. So Kyler Murray could still play football, and if it doesn't work out, go ahead and play baseball. He could still have a long career.
Right. We've seen that one before, too. What's interesting about this whole thing is MLB marketing has been involved in, it seems like putting itself out there a little bit. Shows you how much MLB wants a win over the NFL here, or at least they perceive that to be the case. You know how much Mina Kimes and Jackie McMullen wanted a win over Gutierrez and Isola. Keep it to be the case. Wasn't the case here.
Bye-bye.
Israel Gutierrez, Frank Isola to enter. Only one will leave next in Showdown.
Let's go.
Is an ice and Dingo and the baby. It's Showdown. Good luck to you both. Blake! Psych! Blake Griffin says he wasn't snubbing Steve Ballmer there. What do you think? Israel, you want to make a ruling on that? Believe him or not?
Listen, I have fell victim to this same exact move waiting for Blake Griffin pregame for an interview. He just raced right by me, and I felt really bad at the time, but now I'm in Steve Ballmer territory, so I'm good.
Forget Izzy, forget Steve Ballmer. He also blew off Ralph Lawler, the longtime voice of the Clippers. That was clearly a snub. He knew exactly what he was doing. I wouldn't blow up a billion.
I think he preferred the snub to the 44 he had in the game as well. Israel, I know you're speaking from experience here. You've been snubbed by Blake Griffin before. You've also been snubbed by me. Point Isola, Showdown 2, the Kickers in Chicago who went 0 for 101 at Goose Island's Cody Parkey contest. What kind of lesson do you think is learned by Chicagoans and people everywhere, Frank?
I'll stick to two people I know, Sarah Spain and Michael Wilbon. Everyone's focusing on the kicker. How about that defense that allowed Nick Foles to march down the field? A 3rd and 9, 4th and 2. They never want to talk about the defense, just the poor kicker.
I know exactly what Cody Parkey feels like. Everybody I run into in the streets think they can do my job better than me. And if they came in here and tried to do that, they'd look like all those guys slipping on their you-know-whats trying to kick that football.
Well, about that, I'd say anybody can take a mute to the face like this.
Bang.
And Frank's certainly doing your job better, Israel. There's the FaceTime right there. Isola.
All right, the Jets introduced Adam Gase today as their newest head coach. There were times we looked a little intimidated by the media. Let me give you a little hint here. Don't worry about the media. Just go out and win. You have a good quarterback. If you win, they'll love you in New York. I'll give you an example. The other day marked the 50th anniversary of Joe Namath winning the Super Bowl. Joe Namath can walk on water in New York. Here's a guy that over his career had 47 more interceptions than touchdowns. Nobody remembers that. They just remember Joe Willie running off the field like this. All that matters.
47
Just
more
win, baby.
interceptions than touchdowns. Incredible. One final word on the Cody Parkey. It's tough to kick a 43-yarder. It's actually tougher than catching the pass that Alshon Jeffrey dropped yesterday.
You're right.
Something to consider. We're back tomorrow.
Give yourself a point.